preservation, so I don't want to take his thunder. So please help me welcome Gary to the stage.
Okay, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Everybody hear me okay?
Yeah.
All right, excellent. So, as Andrea just said, this is a version of Lost, Saved, and Endangered. And I have been presenting a form of Lost, Saved, and Endangered for the past 10 years. And over the past 10 years, Toby, is it on? I think it's on now. Yeah, okay. Because it's been done twice a year, primarily during Modernism Week, I have always tailored Lost, Saved, and Endangered to a Modernism Week audience. And that version has been a PG-13. Some parental guidance was recommended. For today, for this particular audience, I created a, come on. Don't you hate technology?
Gary.
A mature audience. All right, thank you. Point there. All right, excellent. All right, so this one has really been curated for mature audiences. And in the last few days, when I started really thinking about this audience in particular, I thought, well, maybe I should tailor it to mature preservationists. And I hope I have some mature preservationists in the audience. So I have a couple of little program notes. I do want to mention Class 1 Historic Site. I'm going to mention it a lot during the presentation, and in Palm Springs, it is the highest level of recognition the city offers. It comes with the most protections, it comes with the most level of review, but it also has tax benefits that include the Mills Act. 2009 to 2019. This is the decade since you were here last. And 10 years ago, I was a volunteer on a bus tour. How I got here 10 years later, I'm not 100% sure. But the presentation today will be focused on this past 10 years. I want to mention the Agua Caliente Band of Cahuilla Indians, the tribe, and the Palm Springs Unified School District. In Palm Springs, in the 1950s and in the 1960s, our best and brightest architects, Donald Wexler, Rick Harrison, E. Stewart Williams, Hugh Captor, William Cody, were doing their best work. They were designing schools. Auditoriums, gymnasiums, and hotels. And many of these properties were built on the sovereign nation, tribe's property, as well as the Unified School District, which is also autonomous. There is no judgment. These are just challenges that have been presented to us in preserving properties on tribal and school district property. Is this cutting out for you back there?
It's okay.
It's okay? All right. I hear it cutting out. All right, so I want to also mention the royal we. Today I am going to say we did this, and we did that. Occasionally I will say, I did it. But the royal we, it does take a village. And a strong, strong player in that village is the Palm Springs Modern Committee. And I want to acknowledge them for their advocacy these past 10 years as well. I want to mention the Desert Sun and the power of print and a Valley Voice. Today you'll see how our local newspaper helped us tremendously by giving us ink, by giving us headlines, and by giving us an opportunity through the Valley Voice which is an op-ed column that helped the preservation community raise awareness and gain support. And then finally, WAIW. It's the question I know you're all asking. Who am I wearing? I am wearing a vintage sport coat purchased at a silent auction at the CPF conference in 2009. It was old 10 years ago. And it is from the Robert Imber collection. As the mayor said, I am a preservationist. However, in the 1960s, I was a flower child. I grew up in the northeastern part of the state of Ohio. All right, so some Buckeyes in the room? Excellent. In the early 1970s, I moved to Hollywood, California, and I immediately became enthralled with the saving of this building. Grand Central Station in New York City was threatened with demolition. The developers wanted to put a big high-rise there. But my teenage idol, Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, as many of you know, lent her name and considerable clout to the fight to save that building, and of course the building was saved. Where was I? The building was saved. Of course the building was saved. But it was my introduction. It was my introduction to historic architectural preservation. In about 1972, I moved to Palm Springs from Los Angeles. I moved to Palm Springs full-time in 2005. I bought a double gable Palmer and Kreisel designed home from the 1960s, and I still reside there today. I love these vintage ads from Canyon View Estates. This is the lost part. But before we get into that, I have some vocabulary for you. We're going to talk about remodel. And remodel is to reconstruct or make over without regard or respect to original architecture. The renovation of authentic architecture into something unauthentic. And Santa Fe. We've got a couple of good examples of Santa Fe. I think you get it. Influenced architectural elements to existing architecture not originally designed in the Spanish style. And then also granitize. And granitize rhymes with sanitize, and I think you can connect those dots. A full 10 years before I moved to Palm Springs, this was in 1995, this pavilion, this was the entrance pavilion, this was the check-in desk for the Dunes Hotel, located in the center of downtown Palm Springs. I happened to be in Palm Springs on a weekend vacation, and I saw in the desert sun that this building was planning to be torn down. This vintage ad shows a rhapsody in sunshine. It was an extremely modern hotel for its time, 3 stories. It had glass elevator columns that only went up 3 stories, but that's how innovative it was. Upon opening day, the Dunes Hotel heralded their drive-in reservation desk, and it was a really striking modern fixture, bird-like structure. It prompted me to write one of my very first letters to the editor that appeared on the Desert Sun's opinion page. This is 1995. And I'll read to you just a quick quote here. I wrote, "Dunes Hotel's vintage lobby and registration pavilion is a crime. Demolishing the Dunes Hotel's vintage lobby and registration pavilion is a crime. Building insignificant new structures in their place erases what was and replaces it with what will never be." I was mad. I loved this little registration pavilion, and I was enamored of Palm Springs enough that I wanted to get involved in saving some of its architecture.
Gary, do you want me to run the microphone?
Sorry?
Do you want me to run the microphone?
Please, yeah. Folks, I hope it's okay for you out there, but it's not good for me up here. And I do see some heads shaking that is not good. Okay, we're gonna take care of this in just a second. So of course it was torn down, and what is there today is this. And this is a 1980s Santa folk.
Just wait.
This is what is there today. Here's the other view of it. This was that trend in the 1980s to truly Santa Fe everything. So they Santa Fe'd it, they remodeled it, and I haven't been inside, but I bet you it's granitized.
Where is it?
Yeah.
Where is this?
Downtown Palm Springs on Indian Avenue, across from the old Staples. If you drive by it, you'll see this. This is quite prominent from Indian Canyon. This is just literally maybe 2 blocks north of Ramon. So it's right there, Ramon, and that is much better, thank you, isn't it, so far? Yeah, excellent. All right, so the mayor mentioned the Desert Inn. And the Desert Inn is truly what put Palm Springs on the map. Beginning in 1908, the Desert Inn was a world-class resort. This picture, I believe, really says it all. It's why Easterners and Northerners were attracted to Palm Springs in the 1920s especially. Flower beds, green lawns, mountain views, and striking Spanish architecture. And we owe it all to this woman, Nellie Kaufman. Nellie Kaufman, a little applause for Nellie Kaufman there. Nellie Kaufman was formidable. She was a pioneer in Palm Springs. She built a world-class hotel, and so revered and loved by the village of Palm Springs that she was always and only referred to as Mother Kaufman. This is a 1950s aerial view of the Desert Inn. It encompassed 35 acres in the center of downtown, and I think you can really see the width and breadth of the grounds of the Desert Inn. Now, this is about a 1955 photograph. I think that's mine. Oh yeah, so there you go, good, you get to see a lot of that Desert Inn there. But this is 1955, so the modern period had already begun. Here we have the Oasis building, right here, East Stewart-Williams. This is Tockwitz Canyon, and this is Palm Canyon. That's a Oasis building, and right here is just the roof line of the Bullock's department store, and we're going to come to that in another minute. All right, so I love vintage ads, and vintage ads are always great. The ad on the left is from 1945. The darker one, the more moody one, if you will, and the 1952 shows a little lighter, a little more brightness. You start to see the athleticism that Nellie was putting out to her folks. Tennis, biking, swimming, and even golf. Toby, I've lost my notes. They're back. They're back. This is unscripted, folks. All right, so again, wonderful vintage postcards. that really, I think, give you the flavor of what the Desert Inn was. Two-story Spanish Revival buildings, thick tile roofs, porticos and paseos, beautiful, beautiful. It offered outdoor dining. Nellie Kaufman was the forerunner to the destination resort. In the 1920s, her hotel had several department stores, Bullock's, J.W. Robinson's. It had a hair salon. It had fine dining. And then, of course, it offered all of the sports that were popular of the day. Once checking into the Desert Inn, there really wasn't a good reason to leave. The entrance to the Desert Inn was pretty impressive. You knew you were arriving somewhere special when you got to the Desert Inn. We're going to talk about the gates of the Desert Inn. When the gates were open, the Desert Inn was open. When the gates were closed, the Desert Inn was closed. You see the massive driveway up, tree-lined, palm trees, up to the main entrance to the hotel. But the gates, again, the gates. To have your picture taken with the gates, you didn't leave the Desert Inn without getting your picture taken with the gates. Think selfies today. You'd be getting your selfie taken with the gates. The gates span 40 feet. Each of those gates is 20 feet wide, hand-wrought iron, heralding the Desert Inn. Those gates still exist, and I'll tell you about those in a few minutes. But coming back to some more vintage ephemera from the Desert Inn, beautiful brochures that spoke to the luxury, the 3-hour drive from Los Angeles back then, not a 2-hour drive. This is a photo of the Desert Inn taken from the Thomas O'Donnell House. There is a CPF event tonight at the Thomas O'Donnell House, and for those of you attending, you'll be able to stand in that exact same place and look down on what is now the new downtown. But this dates from about the 1940s, and you see how lushly landscaped the Desert Inn grounds were. And before I leave this slide, I want to talk about this couple that are right here, right? And we're going to call them Cowboy Bob and Dale. And they are dressed in Western wear. And in the 40s and 50s, Western wear was the popular dress in Palm Springs. They even held an annual rodeo. This photograph dates to a little later. This is more late 50s, maybe early 60s. You'll see now that the grounds of the Desert Inn are a little more landscaped, a little more manicured, I mean, a little more refined, as Nellie Kaufman was catering to a more sophisticated audience coming to Palm Springs. This was the main building at the Desert Inn. But Nellie Kaufman died. Her sons took over the business. They didn't have the same hospitality gene that their mother did. They sold it a couple of times. It sold again. It was eventually owned by Marion Davies. Some of you will be familiar with Marion Davies. She owned it for a while. But eventually, in the early 1960s, the land just became too valuable, and the Desert Inn closed and was torn down. Today, the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation is leading a public awareness program to educate our citizenry on the importance of Nellie Kaufman, the Desert Inn, and as a part of our new downtown, we are getting a new park coming with that downtown. And we are hoping to get the park named for Nellie Kaufman and to have the Desert Inn gates that are in the hands of a family heir reinstalled in the new downtown park. So that's our current advocacy, to get the park named for Nellie Kaufman, and thank you, and get the date and get the gates reinstalled on the grounds of the Desert Inn. So the Desert Inn was demolished, and in 1968, the first climatized mall in Southern California opened on Palm Canyon Drive. And you'll see that it is a modern building with nods towards Hollywood Regency. And what about that bell tower? How beautiful was that bell tower? A signature of the downtown. And the bells worked and they tolled on the hour. It was pretty magnificent. But again, along came the 80s. I mean, really. Absolutely neutered the building. Removed any of its architectural detail, and they just demolished the bell tower and threw it away. So this is the 1980s period, but today, this is our new downtown. And we're all very happy with it. It's got a wonderful Rowan Hotel and some popular retail shops, and of course the requisite Starbucks on the corner, but it's pretty wonderful, and we're all very happy with it. But we are hoping to bring some Desert Inn mojo back to the downtown by getting that park named for Nellie Kaufman and getting those gates reinstalled there. I want to tell you the story of Bullocks. Bullocks, for many Californians, you will know, was a wonderful local department store. The first Bullocks in Palm Springs was on the grounds of the Desert Inn. And this is the two-story Bullocks on the Desert Inn grounds. And this building is extremely representative of what the Desert Inn's architecture was. There were about 39 buildings spread out over those 35 acres. So you can see the room that the Desert Inn allowed for individual buildings. So this is the Bullocks on the Desert Inn grounds. It is the only department store I've ever known of that had its own postcard. Its vintage ads, they advertised extensively. This ad from the 1940s was an invitation to come to Palm Springs carefree and gay. Oh, there it is. That one, that ad. But Bullocks outgrew the Desert Inn, so popular was the store, that in 1947, they hired the architectural firm of Wordman and Beckett. This is the building under construction to build this. And what a gorgeous building it was. This is right in the center of downtown Palm Springs. I'll show you what is there now in just a minute. But this was across the street from La Plaza, and it really was beautiful. Arthur Elrod, some of you will be familiar with Arthur Elrod. Arthur Elrod worked here in the home furnishings department of the Bullocks. A terrific vintage ad from soon after opening. This is late 1940s. And again, coming back to a vintage ad, opening tomorrow, the new Bullocks. And as I mentioned to you earlier, Western wear was very, very popular in Palm Springs. And so here they are even promoting Western wear. And I told you that we would meet Cowboy Bob and Dale again. And so here's Cowboy Bob, and there's Dale in this vintage Bullocks ad. There you go, you remember them from a few minutes ago. All right, and so the 1962 cover of Palm Springs Life magazine, this is an illustration by Earl Cordry. You can see the hustle and bustle of downtown Palm Springs with the Bullocks located here in the background there in green. But there's a lot of activity on the street, a lot of comings and goings, but look here. Let's look down here in the corner. Again, it's Cowboy Bob, this time with his friend Steve. So of course the beautiful Bullocks was demolished in 1996, and today we have this. We have this. You have your vocabulary sheet. All right. Okay, so this is Palm Springs High School Administration Building, Wexler and Harrison, 1957. This was demolished in 2012. A beautiful little mid-century modern building. The Palm Springs Preservation Foundation literally received an anonymous phone call on our voicemail server to tell us that there was a plan to tear the building down, that the school board had plans to build a new band room. So again, starting to talk about how important the desert sun was. So a plan to destroy building creates a controversy. This was the first headline to hit the newspaper. So we immediately began a letter writing campaign. This one is to the superintendent of schools. This one to the president, board of directors, and Preservation Foundation board member Jim Harlan, a very talented and educated architect, wrote a Valley Voice talking about how important this building was and how it was indeed historic, and pointed out the many merits of why it was historic. The school board hired an independent company, a study that said, no, the building's not historic. We said, yes it is. Yes it is. We created a press release. We contacted 22 architects to sign an open letter to the school board declaring the importance of this building. We provided that press release to the Desert Sun. They accommodated us with a very good 2-page article in the Desert Sun talking about the building, talking about the letter from the 22 architects, and putting the heading on it, Architects Decry Plan to Destroy the Building. They actually mentioned all 22 architects in the articles. This was the beginning of really raising awareness to the issue the preservation community was fighting to save this building. It was a building controversy. It truly was. The community, the preservationists, were pitted against the school board and the school district. We engaged local architect Lance O'Donnell to come up with a plan that would create a new building adjacent to the existing building that would give the school board their new band room and maintain the old building as well. But the parents and students said, tear down that building. It didn't matter to them. It was an old, tired building as far as they were concerned. We pushed back. There it is. Activists intensified fight to save the Wexler School building. The Preservation Foundation and many other members of the preservation community attended a school board meeting. It was standing room only. There were over 200 people in the room. We did present a 20-minute PowerPoint to the school board on the merits of the building and why it should be repurposed and not demolished. I wrote a Valley Voice that the newspaper titled, "Tearing Down Historic Buildings Sends a Bad Message to Students." This Valley Voice raised a lot of awareness. It received both positive and negative comments. And you see here just a sample of the many letters that were sent into the Desert Sun, both in favor of preserving the building and those who were also in favor of demolishing the building. If you're a preservationist in the room, you'll be empathetic. The letter in the center from this gentleman right here, he said, if Gary Johns likes that building so much, why doesn't he buy it? Well, I couldn't. And it wasn't for sale. But so we got a lot of both positive and negative feedback to the program. But as you know, it was demolished. It was demolished in August of 2012. It was a steel and concrete building. It didn't go easily. It took 3 days to knock that building down, and I was there all 3 days. That's actually my photograph. Palm Springs Life magazine. In October of 2012, they basically ran a post-mortem on the advocacy, the preservation efforts to save the building. They termed them ill-fated, but there was a lesson for the future. And here's a wonderful picture of Don Wexler there, a multi-page article. Today, this is the replacement building. I know, right? Crusade to save the colonnade. In 2009, Toby, I'm sorry, folks, I've lost it. And I really just need the notes for dates, so I'm pretty, okay, good, that's a good thing. All right, so I wrote this Valley Voice. This is in 2008, in January of 2008. And I said that the colonnade, the Spa Hotel and Colonnade, it was a gold thread in the city's architectural fabric. Can you imagine? How did I come up with that? But it got me on the radio. It got me on the radio, 2 different radio programs, to talk about why the colonnade was important, why the hotel was important, and why it should be saved. And of course, this is the colonnade that we're talking about. It was the modernist structure that Wexler and Harrison designed as the entrance corridor to the spa bathhouse, featured on the 1963 cover of Palm Springs Life magazine. Wonderful vintage brochures from the hotel. All of the ephemera from the hotel, all of the brochures, all of the ads, always featured the colonnade. They knew how important the colonnade was. In this ad here, you see the colonnade here. A wonderful photograph from inside the lobby of the spa, looking out down the colonnade. The advocacy to save the colonnade began as early as 2007, when the first rumors circulated through town that the colonnade and the hotel might be torn down. We had a lot of communication between the tribe, the architecture and, the architectural review committee here in town, and one of the effective advocacies that we did was we did create, for us, one of our first online petitions. We created a petition that anybody could go on, sign their name to, and it emailed directly to the chairman of the tribe. And at the time the demolition of the colonnade occurred, we had 1,025 emails mailed directly to the chairman of the board, chairman of the tribe. We also created a Save the Spa campaign. This was a poster that we created from vintage drawings that we had found, and we distributed this poster along Palm Canyon Drive. Shop owners and retailers were only too happy to support the cause, putting these posters in their windows or at their checkout desks. We also created it so it fit nicely in your car window. It was well known around town that there was a campaign to save the spa. You couldn't go anywhere really in town, the grocery store, the dry cleaner, without seeing a Save the Spa campaign. Spoiler alert, I already told you that we lose the colonnade and the hotel. We had pre-planned and prepaid for the Save the Spa sticker to go on the front page of the Desert Sun. It ran 3 weeks after the demolition. of the hotel. So once the word was out officially that the hotel and colonnade were going to be torn down, the Desert Sun gave it a tremendous amount of ink. Palm Springs icon closing. Palm Springs abuzz over the spa resort news. Months before the demolition of the colonnade, the Desert Sun said farewell to a friend. The group worked to save the spa hotel. That would have been us. The Preservation Foundation paid for a sustainability report addressing the greenest building is the building already built. And how could the tribe tear down these buildings, and send them all to the landfill? So the report was very helpful in convincing the community that we should save these buildings. I mentioned a Valley Voice to you earlier. Here's one of the first Valley Voices written on the subject. This is the spa hotel should be renovated, not simply destroyed. And you see a beautiful vintage ad here for that. This Valley Voice was written by Barbara Marshall. A few weeks later, our civic leaders must act to protect our sense of place. This was written by Amanda Erlinger. Amanda Erlinger is the granddaughter of Frank Sinatra. She spoke about her grandfather, about his love of Palm Springs, and how this hotel was a favorite of his. He often took the waters at the spa, and that, again, this hotel and colonnade should be saved. A few weeks later, her mother, Nancy Sinatra, daughter of Frank, also opined about her childhood going to the spa hotel with her dad, and what a big cheese he was there. Everybody, hey Frank, hi Frank, how are you? And Frank knew everybody. Frank knew the bellhops, he knew the waiters, he knew the hotel manager. She really did her best to convince the tribe to save this building. The spa hotel is worth preserving. And this little photograph in the bottom of the photo here, that's the front page of the Desert Sun on the day that the Desert Sun actually opened. Excuse me, that the spa hotel and colonnade actually opened. 10 years ago, the very first time I ever did Law Save and Endangered, it was in a conference room at the spa hotel. There were 28 people in the room for my very first presentation. Following the presentation, I took them out to the colonnade so they could experience the colonnade firsthand. So this colonnade, excuse me one second. Okay. Well, I'm sorry, I've lost my notes. This is just a wonderful vintage photo of the colonnade there. So the colonnade was demolished on September the 3rd of 2015. Yeah. And many of us were there. I know a lot of people in the room who were there that day. It took about 8 hours, and we stood across the street and watched the colonnade be demolished. The Desert Sun, the next day, devoted the entire front page to the loss of the colonnade. Desert icon taken down. It was a somber, somber day. Because I was there that morning, I was interviewed in the accompanying article. I've had to redact some of it for you. Because I know you're mature, but you're not that mature. Exclaimed an enraged Gary Johns, followed by some more colorful comments. But time heals all wounds. And today, we look forward to the Agua Caliente Cultural Center coming in 2020 on the grounds of the former Spa Hotel and Colonnade. I can't talk about the last 10 years without mentioning poolside gossip. By a show of hands, how many people in the room are familiar with this photograph? All right, about more than half. This photograph was taken here in Palm Springs. The photographer, Slim Aarons, was a society photographer. The people here in the photograph, I want to draw your attention to the lady in yellow. That is Nelda Linsk. Nelda Linsk and her Nelda Linsk and her husband owned the house from 1963 to 1972. And the house, of course, is one of Palm Springs' most iconic homes, the Edgar Kaufman residence, designed by Richard Neutra in 1947. Coming up the poolside here, walking up the side of the pool, is the actress Lita Barron. She was invited over that morning. And the lady in the chaise next to Nelda was Helen Jojo. Helen Jojo was a wonderful, very popular model, and would later go on to marry Hugh Captor. Of course, the title of the photo is Poolside Gossip. If you were to ask Nelda today, what were they gossiping about? She would say, probably the people at the other end of the pool. And it's an honor for me to have Nelda Linsk in the audience with us today. Nelda, please. Nelda, before you sit down, who are you wearing?
Oh, I think it's an Oscar.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
What are you wearing now?
Oh, this is, oh, yes, thank you. I did a costume change. Red for lost, blue for saved. Also purchased at that same silent auction here in this very room in 2009. Also from the Robert Imber collection. Russ, could you bring me a glass of water, please? Okay. Santa Fe Federal Savings and Loan, Easter at Williams, 1961. When it no longer functioned as a building, an individual developer purchased the building, and his own offices were located there in the building. Thank you, Russ. So the owner of the building had an idea to build what would be called barristo lofts. And this building was planned to be shoehorned into the parking lot of the bank. There wasn't a lot of room there. One of the things that the preservationists wanted to do is to get Class 1 designation for this building's site. The developer and the city were of the mind that the building could be historic, but not the entire site. So if only the building were historic, then there would be room to build this building also on the site. Well, we argued and we created 3 very, very, very effective campaigns. The first one was no barristo lofts. We showed up at City Council, flooded the council chambers with everyone wearing no barristo lofts buttons. At a later City Council meeting, we all showed up wearing Class 1. First we told them what we didn't want, then we told them what we did want. Very effectively, we created a flyer here that says, "Save this building." It was the campaign. We told the public why the building was important and why it should be saved. This is in about 2008. Again, I've lost my notes here. Only for the dates, folks, only for the dates. But what we did do, maybe if we made them smaller, they would all fit in there. Okay. Let's leave that, yeah. Okay, so Modernism Week was a willing partner in helping get this building designated. The chairman of Modernism Week today spoke in as early as 2007 on the importance of this building. So this was a long, long campaign. The flyer we provided, it was innovative at the time, we provided the email addresses of the mayor and city council. They were flooded with emails. This flyer went out throughout Modernism Week. It was on all of the double-decker buses, and so we got a lot of support from the community and from around the country on the importance of this building. Ron Marshall from the Preservation Foundation wrote an opinion piece. Westman's Bristol Lofts project is flawed. One of the main reasons was that the new building and the old building only had 4 feet of space between them. It was really crowding the historic pavilion with this new building. And then of course there's a headline here in the paper, Bristol Lofts proposal goes before the city council tonight. It was very complicated. As I was redoing this research on this, I can't even begin to explain to you how complicated the project was. However, sort of anticlimactically, I just can't look at this, they just won't stay here. Anticlimactically, on a 3-2 vote, the Santa Fe Federal Savings and Loan site was declared historic, which put an end to Bristol Lofts. Shortly after the council's vote, when the developer of the owner of the building could no longer build his project there, he sold the building. And fortunately, the Palm Springs Art Museum was more than willing, ready, and able to come in and purchase the building. And as we know today, fast forward, it is the Palm Springs Art Museum's Architecture and Design Center. I think that is one of our most successful advocacies to save the building and get it declared as a historic property. And today, until July 17th, the Palm Springs Art Museum's Architecture and Design Center offers Hugh Captor Organic Desert Architecture, and it is free to all CPF attendees. So be sure you get over there, and it's walking distance here from the hotel. So get over there and see Hugh Captor Organic Desert Architecture. This is Palm Springs City Hall, John Porter Clark, Albert Frey, and Williams, 1952, 1957, and this is a Class 1 historic site. But again, a controversy developed over the city wanting to reconfigure the parking lot. They wanted to reconfigure the site. We made the argument, no, that it includes the site, the building and the site. The architects planned the site to complement the building. Oops. So the proposal from the city was to take parking from the west of the building and from the east of the building, and you see this open space here in the center. You see this open space here in the center where there were no cars. Their proposal was to eliminate some of the parking on the west side of the property and bring it across the front of the building so that people didn't have as far to walk. So this is pretty much how it looks. This is Palm Springs City Hall. And this again is how the architects planned for it. This is on a busy weekday. You don't see any cars because they are parked out of the way. They are parked on either side of the building. This view corridor across the front of the building was intentional. So on a Sunday morning at about 7:30, we enlisted a group of friends to come to City Hall and park their cars as the plan would propose. And it worked just as effectively on the city council chambers. which view did you prefer? I wrote an opinion piece criticizing the city for making too quick of a decision on reconfiguring the parking lot. It should have gone through the city's review process, the Architectural Review Committee, and to the Historic Site Preservation Board. When I submitted my Valley Voice, I sent along a representative sample of photos that the Desert Sun ran with the opinion piece. Then they got on board and they started giving us ink. Modernists don't pave art to put in a parking lot. City Hall redesign caused a stir among the preservationists, and they ran those photos. Every time they ran an article, they ran those photos. It was the single most important thing we did to save this from being reconfigured. Those photos were worth 1,000 words. So as I mentioned to you, the City Council was wrestling with the definition of site. What was the site? They said it was the building. No, we said it was the site. The Desert Sun stepped up twice and said, listen to the critics of the City Hall design. And they also gave the Planning Commission a thumbs up on their decision to overturn the appeal. Climactically again, on a 3-2 vote, that gives you a little bit of an idea of what the council was like then. On a 3-2 vote, they did amend the historic designation of the City Hall parking site to include the site and not just the building. Okay. All right, so back in about 2009, the Historic Tennis Club District, this little building, La Serena Cottages, was a 1930s collection of Spanish cottages. It was a little motel from the 1930s, and it was quite beautiful. And I wrote a Valley Voice here that, again, the Desert Sun puts the heading on these. Save neighborhood with historic designation. I made the argument that if the neighborhood was called the Historic Tennis Club neighborhood, we should save historic buildings in it. It was a hard argument to make. This is what we were dealing with. The owners of the property bought a well-run, functioning small motel, closed it, and then let it deteriorate. Let it deteriorate and become the eyesore that the community screamed about. It was a very intentional decision on the part of the property owner. But like I said, it was really rough. I mean, this was, the best thing about the property were the weeds in the ground. But the council did endorse La Serena Cottages preservation, and today it is absolutely stunning. Under new ownership, it has been beautifully restored and made the front page of the Desert Sun in 2012, heralding the preservation and the chic new hotel in Palm Springs. And this is Captor Plaza. This is actually, originally it was Topwitz Plaza. It has since been renamed Captor Plaza. But this is Topwitz Plaza, and the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation did submit a Class 1 nomination to get the properties designated. Here's pretty much what it looked like at the time. The owner of the property had moved everybody out, turned the water off, stripped the toilets and the sinks out, removed the air conditioning and all, to get it demolished. They had already pulled a demolition permit for the Topwitz Plaza. And I just want to point out to you some of the highlights of the building. The architecture really is gorgeous. I call it Pueblo modern. One of Hugh Captor's signatures would become this eyebrow window that he often used in his architecture. And here, without permission, is a Julius Schulman photograph of the building at that time. So the demolition permit was to allow for the Aberdeen project, and the mayor mentioned this in his opening comments. It was a mixed-use planned development project that skirted setbacks and height limits and many other of the things that made the neighborhood important. So the preservationists appealed the Talkers Plaza demo permit. This page here, I know it's difficult to see, but this long page here is one page in the Desert Sun that is all letters to the editor in support of preserving Talkers Plaza. But not everybody was in favor of it. So in our review process here in the city, the project had to go to the Architectural Advisory Committee, that's the AAC, and it had to also go through the Planning Commission. The Architectural Advisory Committee and the Planning Committee were turning this project down for its many perceived flaws. So AAC was reined in by Palm Springs City Attorney on Aberdeen. The city attorney had to attend one of the AAC meetings because at a previous meeting, some of the committee members had expressed a bias. But the Aberdeen project was weeks and months in the making. In the center here is a letter of Valley Voice that was written by Hugh Captor himself. He expressed his dismay with the new project and explained that because he had been here since the 1950s, he knew many of the city fathers who were planning Tahquitz Canyon Way and spoke to what the original intent of Tahquitz Canyon Way was, and it didn't involve abandoning setbacks. So again, talking about the Desert Sun, look at these headlines. What preservationists wouldn't love this amount of ink supporting the program? No decision made on Tahquitz Plaza. Nexus cancels bid to stop Tahquitz Plaza designation. Tahquitz Plaza is a question for a new city council. Council to hear Tahquitz Plaza. So it was an election year. It was 2015. We knew that in November there would be an election. There were several, including our mayor and another city council candidate, were running on a pro-preservation platform. So what we needed to do was buy time. The historic nomination gave us 6 months on the stay of demolition. The Historic Site Preservation Board, through its processes, were able to take an option on an additional 2 months, and then because of some administrative errors, we gained another 2 months. So we basically bought 10 months of time on the preservation of Tahquitz Plaza. As the mayor, you stole some of my thunder. The mayor, as he said, the very first city council meeting of the new council with 3 new council members, the Tahquitz Plaza was declared historic. You see a group of preservationists who were all there that evening. In the upper corner here, you see the owner of the building congratulating Hugh Captor, and let's all do the same. Hugh Captor is in the audience today. And so now, yes, it is indeed a declared historic site. It is around the corner. It's a walking distance from here, and I encourage you to go over and explore what has now been renamed Captor Plaza and get a cup of coffee, get your hair cut, do a little retail shopping. It's a wonderful experience, and we're very, very happy to have saved that building. A few weeks ago, the world was transfixed with the fire at Notre Dame. A number of years ago, we had a major fire here in one of our important little churches. This is Palm Springs Community Church, Charles Tanner, 1939, gutted by a fire. There is a plan to restore the church and do some New hotel built out there, but it is still in process, and it is high on my endangered list because a burned out building with a chain link fence around it is never a comforting sign. Lloyd Wright, Frank's son, worked here in Palm Springs. This is 1923. This is the Oasis Hotel, and what remains for us today is the Oasis Hotel Tower. This is right downtown Palm Springs. You can walk by this all day long. I had an opportunity to tour the inside recently, and it's not looking good. It's kind of deteriorating from the inside out. This is board in place concrete. Though the owner of the building keeps a nice coat of paint on the outside, it's deteriorating from the inside. High on our list of endangered properties. Town and Country Center, again, the mayor mentioned this to you earlier. This is Paul R. Williams and
Quincy Jones.
Thank you, and Quincy Jones. I have fact checkers here. So this has been an about 11-year campaign, to keep this building standing. It was originally planned to be demolished for a new road through there. We were able to stop that. The first time the Class 1 nomination went to the City Council, it was rejected. It took several more years to raise more awareness, to get it back to the council with a new council and get it declared as a historic site. Wonderful vintage postcard from the day. This is my mother and my aunt in the courtyard of the what are we talking about? Town and Country Center in 1969. They were on a West Coast vacation. Like La Serena Villas, it's a hard fight. It's intentionally left to look bad. It received recently a historic paint job, which has made it a little bit more attractive to the downtown area, but it is in very, very bad condition. It's chain linked. The city has done everything they can to protect it, including security and cameras, and we're doing everything we can to keep this building intact until it can be fully restored. Over the many years, you see a number of Valley Voices that have been written. This is just a sample of them. And even most recently, this year, a new Valley Voice by Palm Springs Preservation Foundation's Vice President Stephen Keelan wrote a Valley Voice that said, "Plan sacrifices too much of the Town and Country Center of Palm Springs." And the plan he was talking about is that the current owner, owning a Class 1 historic site, has come to the city. This is an aerial view. Everything that you see there in white is what is referred to as the Town and Country Center. So the owner is proposing that he tear down that much of it. Over 50% of the historic fabric is being proposed to be torn down. We're going to fight it. We hope that the Town and Country Center will return to its full glory in the next couple of years. I'm optimistic. Preservation has been very, very good for Palm Springs. This is the City of Palm Springs Visitor Center, Frey and Chambers, 1963. This is bringing in over 200,000 visitors a year into our hyperbolic paraboloid. Got it? And I get nods in the front row here. And so you have 200,000 visitors coming into a mid-century modern building. If you're coming to Palm Springs, don't you want your visitor center in a striking modern building? We have that, and we're fortunate to have it. This is the Palm Springs Art Museum's Architecture and Design Center. I mentioned this earlier, E. Stewart Williams, 1961. This is now the Architecture and Design Center. They're averaging 100,000 visitors a year there. Even our Wellwood Murray Memorial Library, John Porter Clark, 1940, is now a visitor center and the research library for the Palm Springs Historical Society, averaging about 5,000 visitors a year. And as I mentioned earlier, the Tockwitz Plaza renamed Captor Plaza, is fully leased and there is a wait list for tenants. As recent as yesterday, my Valley Voice to the Desert Sun welcoming you all here. The Desert Sun entitled it, Palm Springs Preservation is Powering the City's Future. I think that's the message I want to leave you with. But before I let you go, just a few more minutes. Did you know that the French Poodle is the unofficial official dog of Palm Springs? I have proof. This is the Barone's. This is an oversized steel sculpture that is at the entrance of our no-kill animal shelter here in Palm Springs. And it is Monsieur Pompidou. In the 1950s, a Ravinsky cartoon shows a little poodle here at his master's seat. Kind of subtle. There it is right there. But the Palm Springs Villager often featured a poodle on the front cover. Here you see the French poodle here, and I think you can see that's 1954, and then the other one is 1947. The French poodle appeared on the cover of Palm Springs Villager often. To further the point, French poodle, French poodle. Now it's Palm Springs Villager and Palm Springs Life. A favorite getaway from Hollywood, Debbie Reynolds and Anita Ekberg, both photographed at the Palm Springs Racket Club with their French poodles. Tony Curtis and Janet Leigh with their French poodle, also at the Palm Springs Racket Club. French poodles enjoying Thanksgiving dinners at a Palm Springs residence. Red Skelton at his home in Palm Springs with his 3 French poodles. And if you can see the young man sitting on the chaise lounge right here, Bobby Rydell, if anybody remembers Bobby Rydell. We come back to Nelda Lentz. We always come back to Nelda Lentz. In 1970, Nelda graced the cover of Palm Springs Life, the December issue, at the front doors of the Kaufman House with her French poodle at the time. That was her French poodle, Nico. And Nelda will tell you that she had to decorate the house in August for this photograph. And then just a few years ago, Palm Springs Life duplicated the photo. It's not the same poodle. The French poodle appears in vintage ads, wonderful little vintage ads, fabulous little French poodle there in this hand drawing of the Palm Springs Builder's Supply, and even in hand laundry, the poodle appeared. In 1957, I believe it is, a Holiday magazine did a 5-page spread on Palm Springs, and they featured, I call her Estelle, walking her French poodle on Palm Canyon Drive. A full-page poem in Palm Springs Life magazine. The first line of the poem is "Poodles by the Oodles," and here we see our French poodle donning sunglasses. Another wonderful Earl Cordray photograph of a couple walking along Palm Canyon Drive. This is at the very corner of Tockwitz Canyon and Palm Canyon Drive with their little French poodle right there. And you remember this from earlier. Cowboy Bob and Steve were down here in the corner. But now in this blow up, we see a couple of Canadian couples walking their French poodles on Palm Canyon Drive. And I often say, don't I wish Cowboy Bob and Steve were walking the French poodle. The quintessential Palm Springs poodle on the cover of Palm Springs Life magazine, 1961. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you'll all take advantage and get over to the Architecture and Design Center. You have free admission to the UCAPT or Organic Desert Architecture. Thank you very much.